Okay, let's go. You might remember in one of our previous videos that we found the mast and rescued it from a field where it had been sitting for approximately 16 months or so. Weathered and rotting away, we loaded it onto the trailer and the guys took it up to the shop to see if it could actually be fixed. When we found the mast in that field, it had old rotting halyards hanging off of it, a bunch of rusted rigging, some broken chain plates, old electronic wires running in every direction, and all sorts of little creatures living inside it. So Missy and I decided to take a trip up to the shop and see how the guys were progressing. When we arrived at the shop, the first thing I noticed was that they'd stripped off all the old rigging and hardware and how much better the mast looked already. However, there was definitely more damage than they had originally thought, but it looked as though everything was going to be repairable. So this area is where you heated it. I can feel.
Yeah, and this was right here. There was a, I don't really want to say a crease, but it was raised up a bit, you know, from the bending, and so we flattened that back out using a clamp and clamped it back down.
And what's in there?
We put a internal doubler, which is basically a section of mast that goes, you know, from approximately right here around the mast to the other side, and then it's installed using these 1/4-inch stainless monobolts, which are structural aircraft rivets, to add a little bit of stiffness in this area where it was compromised, you know, from the bending.
Is this just corrosion on here?
Mm-hmm. This was from the storm tristle track, and it's a stainless 7/8 Schaefer track that goes on there that we have laying down over here. But you know, we'll reinstall that once the mast is painted. So what we'll do is, we've got it marked here, is we'll cut the mast here. We'll cut the broken section as well. We'll square both ends off, make sure you know, that they're nice and square, and then we'll fabricate a splice section that'll slide in this section here about 18 to 20 inches, and then it'll go about 18 to 20 inches into the lower section, and we will install it using the 1/4-inch monobolts, just like we did on that upper internal doubler.
Sure looks nice and straight.
It's a little tricky getting, you know, when you cut this off, to making sure that you're exactly square. So we'll have to spend some time, you know, making sure we are square on the section before we can mate the two sections back together.
Same thing here, square.
Yep, we'll square that up. You know, we'll butt the two pieces up together without the doubler and see how they match up. You know, spend some time filing and getting them nice and perfectly square, and then we'll install the doubler.
Right now, the way everything stands, it looks as though everything's going to be fine. I'm pretty happy with what they've done so far. They'll get these bottoms squared and commence splicing it together, probably in a week or so. And at that time, maybe we can come back up and see how that's going. This is what it was like the first couple of weeks aboard the boat. It rained a lot. It wasn't very comfortable in the beginning, but I was just so excited to be on the boat that I didn't really mind. Despite the fact that the rain seemed to be leaking into the boat as quickly as it fell from the sky, it simply meant that it was just another thing I had to add to the long list of things to do, but it was all part of the process, and I was excited to get started. So if you look closely, you can see just how bad a shape this deck is. This is the original teak deck, but you can see that it's thinned out quite a bit. These screws are all exposed. The caulking is all it's oozed out between the planks, and it hurts to walk on this barefooted. Let me put it that way. But I do have a solution. It's a temporary solution, but it's a solution nonetheless. I can make it look nice again. I can keep it from leaking, but it won't be long term. Eventually this deck's going to have to be replaced or just stripped. Although I'd rather keep the teak deck look. I like the original feel of it. Just gonna someday, hopefully I can afford to get it done the correct way. But in the meantime, I've got a decent solution, and I'll show you how that goes. The plan was to start by pulling out all of the exposed screws one by one, and that amounted to about 90% of the deck. I'd then countersink each hole, reset and reseal every screw, including those on the stanchions and any other hardware that was on the deck. It was a slow, tedious process, to say the least, but I really enjoyed every minute of it. It kept me focused, and the more I completed, the better it looked. I could slowly see the transformation from the old beat-up teak deck to one that was, still old, but it had a little bit of charm to it. And the best part of that was that it didn't leak anymore. There were several sections of the teak deck that had to be replaced, but that too was kind of therapeutic, and it was a process that I completely embraced. I eventually developed kind of a rhythm to the slow tapping of the hammer on the chisel as I worked my way towards the bow, but knowing that I still had the entire boat to do, it kept me occupied, kept my mind focused. Before too long, that task of replacing all the screws had turned into replacing teak, and eventually replacing teak had turned into the never-ending job of sanding the entire deck. As much work as all this is, I have to admit that in a way I'm glad I don't have the resources to hire others to do this work. If I did, it would only mean that I'm the one missing out on the experience of renovating such a cool old boat. And at the end of the day, that's the reason I'm here. There's still a long way to go here, but with each passing day we get another small step closer to completion. And while I look forward to sailing her soon, I often find myself stopping to admire and appreciate what's truly happening here. It's hard to describe to most, but there's a healing power at work here that I'm feeling and I'm grateful for. So thank you, old boat. Thank you.